for tonight, we're doing an introduction. We'll go over the process itself, and then Mark will highlight the 4 developer proposals, and then we'll have some public comment after I wrap it up. So the Academy School building has been vacant for over 14 years. Continues to deteriorate, doesn't contribute anything to the town's tax base. And in order to make the building usable again, it would cost well in excess of $8 million. We know that. We have estimates that are 5 and 10 years old. You can see facility studies and assessments were conducted in 1997, 2004, 2007, and 2010. So we've studied the hell out of this thing. And that's how we've come to the conclusions, or not conclusions, but the proposals that we've come to. Just a little history. The original Hand Academy, which is not the school that you see there today, was gifted from Daniel Hand in 1884. In 1887, it became a public, it says high school, but I think it was just a public school for all grades, K to 12. In 1921, the original school building was demolished and replaced with the current building. In 1935, the addition was put on, which is some classrooms and the gymnasium that we all see.
I'm sorry, this isn't true, and I have documentation from historians from town.
Excuse me, this is a public hearing where we present first, and then we take public comment, okay? In 1958, the Daniel Hand Estate trustees released the conditions of the site's use so that it didn't have to be a school anymore. In 2004, the school was closed. And in 2011, the building was transferred from the Board of Education to the town. So this shows you the, what I was talking about the original building over here and the addition over here. The school property parcel itself, it's 5.1 acres, including the ball fields and play areas. It's located within the Madison Historic District and the Downtown Village District. We had an appraisal done on the property, and it came back at roughly $1 million. And this is the entire site, which we're cutting it. This property line cuts out Youth and Family Services, the Powder House, and Old Town Hall. But it does include all the area that you see outlined in yellow. So there's a timeline for what we've gone through to get to this point. We started in the spring of 2016, where we formed a steering committee to look at the situation and determine how to proceed in the best interest of the town. We have representatives from the Board of Selectmen, Al and I, Planning Department, Dave Anderson, our town planner, the Economic Development groups got involved, and Historic Preservation groups got involved. And this led the process to determine an appropriate use for the Academy School process. On February 27th, we met with the Historic District Commission. This is 2017. We met with the Historic District Commission to get their opinion of what they think was appropriate, what could be done, what couldn't be done. It is a historic building, so we wanted to make sure that we took their feelings into account. On March 3rd, we met with the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Historic District Commission said that we needed to maintain the historic character of the property, specifically the building, and that the building should be used for the common good of the community. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed that the property had great potential and that a mixed-use plan with something for everyone could be a considerable asset for the town. Then we conducted an online survey. We had over 1,000 responses to our survey. And so it gave us, it was a pretty well-rounded survey that gave us a good picture of what people were thinking about the school going forward. So as a result of the survey, we found out that 44% of all people surveyed felt that the building was very significant. 33% said somewhat significant, which adds up to 77%. Rating the reuse or repurposing of the building, the largest, and this is where you can respond to multiple choices, but the largest was redeveloped with a mixture of uses. On March 28th, we held a public workshop conducted by a company called FHI. And the point of that was to get people in small work groups to talk about ideas for the property and what they thought would be the best thing to do going forward. So at the public workshop, we had 85 attendees. Of those that responded, 79% said that the town should sell the property depending on the use or lease the building. The majority responded that the building should not be demolished, and the majority were in favor of moving to an RFP for proposals of possible uses of the building and site. And so the thing you have to understand about an RFP is it's a request for proposals. It's not a determination of what's going to happen. We wanted to see what people who had money and who had an interest in developing the property would do if we gave them the opportunity. That's where we're at right now. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mark from Colliers.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening. It's nice to be here again this evening. We are a Madison-based firm, or at least we have an office here in Madison, of which I work out of, and we have a handful of Madison residents that work for us. I believe it's one that's here tonight. So I'm just going to walk you through the process that we went through to get to where we are tonight. And yes, it was a request for proposal, but we started with a request for qualifications. The first thing we wanted to do was make sure that whoever was proposing an idea was qualified to do the work. The last thing we wanted to do was go down the road, engage with a potential developer, only to find out that they weren't really qualified to do the work. So we issued a request for qualifications back in September that just asked for some basic information, you know, how the organization is structured, who they would use as a team, and more importantly, where they've done similar types of developments. Of that RFQ, 10 qualification packages were received, and through a review by the subcommittee, all 10 were deemed to be qualified to submit a proposal. So we issued the request for proposal. I'm sorry, I should have advanced that slide. That's just a snapshot of what was in the qualification, request for qualifications. So we issued a request for proposal, now getting more detail. How do you envision the use of this parcel as a development opportunity? So that was issued back in October, and we gave them a good almost 2 months to put together a detailed plan as to how they would envision this property. And proposals were received in late December. Buried within the request for proposal, we indicated everything that we had heard the town wanted for the parcel or the building. We wanted to retain the playground that was on or near the site, and we needed to have some level of open space post-development. That was important. We wanted it to be a mixed-use building, not a chain store, not 100% of anything, ideally. We wanted to maintain the shell of the original 1921 building, which was approximately 25,000 gross square feet. We wanted to provide a really attractive pedestrian connection between the Academy School parcel and the downtown businesses to the east. That's what we asked them to do, or we wanted them to include in their development. In addition to this information, we shared with them all the information we had on the building or the site. So we had a hazardous material survey that was issued. We had existing conditions assessments for the building were shared. As-built condition, test pit information for the site. We had an appraisal, as well as the information from the visioning session. So everything the town had been collecting over the years, we shared with developers to highlight what it was we knew about the building and what it is we ultimately wanted to see in the building. We told them what we wanted. They told us what they felt was the best use of the parcel. And you'll see in the highlight of the proposals that it was an overwhelming residential complex. We didn't get anything that said commercial use, offices, education use. It was heavily a residential-driven opportunity. We also know that while the building is attractive, the site behind it was equally, if not more, attractive. We know a few of the developers would not even be here if it was the building only, because of the opportunities for the site behind the building. So again, we asked for information. They shared with us what they thought made the most sense from a development perspective. So I will just highlight again, very high level. I hope many of you were able to at least come to the presentations last week and got a deeper dive. But this is the first one from Dakota Partners. They are based out of Massachusetts. And you can see they're retaining the entire complex of the Academy School, constructing 39 market rate townhouses with parking in the backside. I failed to mention one of the other issues we asked the developers to consider was when they were developing the septic system for this parcel, for the redevelopment, to include some additional storage for potential town use. Dakota was responsive to that in terms of providing a septic system that could receive septic system from businesses in town. There was some common space that they were including, or community space, I should say, in the front end of the building here. But again, it was...
No, I don't think so.
No.
Oh, in the gym? Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe it was Graylock, but in the gymnasium.
No. I think it was all residential.
Just, can we save your comments right afterwards?
I've got the proposals here, but I'm pretty sure there was some element of a community art space somewhere within the building. Okay. The next one is from the Women's Institute, which was in partnership with the Hope Partnership. And their development concept was a lot less dense, obviously. Again, retaining the full footprint of the Academy School for approximately 13 workforce rental units, as well as 16 market rate rental units over here, with tennis courts and gardens and playgrounds and open space. So theirs was the least dense. I'm pretty sure they had a community space back in the gym as well.
Yes, yes.
All right. The next proposal that we heard from was from RAL Development out of New York City, with their founding partner, a resident of Madison. And this was 100% residential, no doubt about it. High-end, over $1 million, per unit type of development in their mind. They did offer, which was a little bit of a unique proposal, in addition to the $150,000 offer for the site, a revenue sharing opportunity that if the units were selling over a certain amount per square foot, the town would receive some benefit. But that's only if they had reached that threshold. But this was 100% of a residential development. The last was from Graylock Property, based out of Mystic, Connecticut. Again, they had a mix of, they actually proposed taking down the 35 edition and only keeping the 21 original building, which I'm pretty sure had community art space in the front here. Thank you. 3 for 4. Those are Hall of Fame members. Workforce rental housing in the original Academy School building, and then 24 luxury townhouse complex on the backside. The unique portion of this development was turning over back to the town this green space in between the two parcels. And again, they had a very attractive rendering of what that would look like, on a nice summer day. They talked about sustainability measures. They had roof gardens up here, if you remember, from their development. Again, they were looking to offer $1.2 million for the property, as part of their proposal. With that, I guess we'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so on February 12th and 13th, we had the developer workshop. That was last week. 2 proposals each night for 2 nights. Each developer got an hour to, a half hour to present and a half hour to answer questions. Tonight we're having a public hearing on this whole thing to explain the process and to explain the proposals again, and then to answer some questions. What the future holds is that the Board of Selectmen will act Monday night to review the 4 proposals, decide if any of them should go forward, if some of them should go forward. And then after that, it's going to be a matter of what we all feel is necessary to make the people of town comfortable with taking this to referendum, because the final word for this whole project comes from the voters. If the voters don't want to do anything there, nothing's going to happen. The building will continue to deteriorate, and we have no other plans for it. So I'm showing a little bit of my bias, but it's important to me that we do something with this building, because it's a sin that it's sitting there rotting. I don't know if anybody's driven by the last day or so, but now we've had to board up windows because the vandals are getting into the basement. So, you know, it's not a good situation. Something has to be done. But I won't go there. Okay, the process going forward. The public hearing will provide a time for the Board of Selectmen to hear comments from the residents. We will then determine if any of these 4 proposals are inappropriate, and we'll advance to a due diligence period with any appropriate respondents, and then if a successful proposal is identified, the selected proposal would be moved to referendum. Okay, so one of the things I'd like to point out is that when we first started this process over a year ago, we put up a lot of FAQs on the website so that people we could answer questions before people just asked a bunch of questions, the same ones over and over again. We knew a lot of questions people were asking. So we went up and put up the FAQs on the website. One of them is, what will this cost what will the cost to the residents of the town be if the property is developed? And the point of this is to make the cost be somebody else's cost, and it will be developed at no cost to the residents of the town. What would happen to the ball fields if the property is redeveloped? The future of the ball fields is contingent on the future use of the site. If the ball fields were displaced to accommodate redevelopment, the town would consider providing ball fields at another location based on what is needed. We have room up at Brown School where we could put 2 more fields to replace these. Can the property be rezoned to permit additional uses? This is one of the questions that we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission with. Yes, the Planning and Zoning Commission has the authority to change the zone and/or amend the regulations to permit additional uses on the property. Any such action requires public hearings, just like anybody else would do. What approvals would be required if the property were to be redeveloped? It would need to be approved by the Madison Historic District Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Historic District Commission also has the approval authority over full or partial demolition of the existing building. When we spoke with them, they told us that the building could not be demolished, but that the newer section could be if that was one of the proposals. The property is also located in the downtown village district. That triggers additional requirements for architectural and aesthetic review of any proposed development. So I'm going to open it up for public comment. I would just like to say we have a lot of people here, and at the last meetings, we had a lot of comments. So I'd like to ask you to keep your comments brief, 1 or 2 minutes. If you're standing up to say something somebody else said, think about not standing up and saying that, or just say I agree with so and so. Because we like to move along. We like to let as many people talk as they want to, but we also, want to have an interesting time. And the final thing is, one of the things that happened at the 2 developers' evenings were people started to get a little rowdy. This is Madison. Let's have some decorum, all right? That's all I ask. Be respectful of the people that you're talking to and talking about. Let's enjoy the opportunity to talk about this together. All right, so I'll open it up. You guys want to come down? I'm going to make them face you. Guess you're not allowed to talk.
Gus Ward, as of 34 Ellsbury Circle. As you can see, I don't have more time to consider this particular subject, and more information and more options also seem to be irrelevant to me, because I was on the 2004-5 committee that originally studied the building, and we came up with a proposal that was not accepted by the town. I worked with the consultants in the 2012 study, and I prepared 2010 study, and I prepared historical documentation for the 2012 study that was done on the building. So I don't know what more information or more options or more time is to be required. I've been spending time since 2004 on this project, 14 years. And I think that the proposals that are in front of you are things that are worth looking at and considering for the benefit of the entire town, not some particular special interest group that maybe has this many people. And you look here, there's 13,000 members of the legislative body of the town of Madison. There's probably, what, 100 or 125 people that are here?
137.
So like 1% of the 13,000 members of our legislative body shows how much interest there is in this facility.
Thank you, guys.
My name is Jennifer Rodriguez. I grew up in Madison, went to the schools here, 1 to 12. I moved back to Madison. 2 kids went to school, first grade, graduated, have a son who's a freshman now. I have a long history with this town, and I'd like to first comment on, you kind of put some bullets up to start, and you noted that the school's been vacant for a long time. I'd like to point out that the school was vacant because they closed it down quietly when the year before the town had voted to keep it open. At this point, you're talking about how much money it's going to cost to fix it. Well, how much money was put into it before you closed it down without asking anyone? They had just replaced all the windows a few years before that. The only options that are being put forth or pushed for right now, or to sell the land or do some kind of private contracting with it, there's no options there about how the town could use the property. Why don't we move the town offices back downtown and sell the Hammonasset property that no one really cares about? There were, we had all these grand ideas about what we should do for our town. We closed the academy school and left Island Avenue open, and then we needed a whole new senior center. What if we had left Academy School open, turned Island Avenue into a senior center, but instead we spent millions of dollars on the senior center? And nobody's complaining about the tax base with the senior center, and nobody's complaining about the tax base with the humongous property we bought on the east end of town. Sorry, I just want to make sure I got to all my notes here. Oh, one of the other things you put up was about 48% of the people at that meeting said they wanted to sell the property, but you really glossed over the fact that the first 2 responses were, we're using it as a school or using it for some other town property, seem to be more than 48% if you put those 2 together. So it looks like the town really wants to keep it as a town use property, not something that a select few could potentially use. And saying that this is something that people will use to downsize who already live in Madison. As I said, I've lived in Madison practically my whole life. There's no way I could afford to buy $1 million townhouse downtown. I'm a lawyer, by the way, so it's not like, it's just not reasonable to think that the people in town are going to be buying these properties. And I think those are all my notes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Crow from Twilight Drive, and I actually think this has been a pretty good process. And I think that, I know you asked for decorum, but I have to use a line that my grandmother used to say, "It's time to shit or get off the pot." All right, I'm sorry, that's what my grandmother said, but we've had a lot of comments. We didn't get any proposals that said, let's keep the ball fields and just work on the building. Let's make the building. Nobody presented any of those proposals. I would like to comment that 2 of the proposals said they'd even give the town $1 million for it. And one of the proposals said, oh, we want the town to absorb half the cost of what we're doing or something. And I think that was the women's initiative. It said the town's going to absorb all the cost or something. I personally would like to see this thing move forward to get the burden off the town. Yes, I agree 100% that there was a waste of money on the field at the east end of town, and I think we spent a lot of money on the senior center and whatever else. I don't want to waste any more money. It's time to move forward and get this thing onto the tax rolls and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Susan Glantz, Greenhill Road. I actually studied these proposals, and I'll try to be brief. I was going to kind of make some comments on them, which I also will write and submit written. As far as what we have, I can't totally disagree with what people have said before in terms of the way this town has planned things over the last few decades. But with going forward with what we have, the RAL development is 100% residential, is not paying very much money for the property, and they're going to sell everything for over $1 million per unit, and that's totally out of touch with what was requested from them. It's not mixed use. I think that should be completely eliminated. The Dakota Partners concept is a little better, but that's also completely residential. And so I don't think that should be considered either. I think there are 2 reasonable proposals here. The Greylock and the Women's Institute. The Greylock has a lot of advantages, including using the stage auditorium part of the original school, and they've come up with some really nice concepts like a workspace collaboration with the town and businesses, and there's just a lot of thought put into that proposal. They don't require financing. They're offering over $1 million for the property, and I would actually encourage that if they need to lower that $1.2 million to a little bit, still consider it. And they have that really nice open space in the middle, separating the building from the new units in the back. I would like to just make a comment about that space that everybody wants to turn into residential, the ball fields. I think we have a kind of maybe a missed opportunity here that we could have put in the requirements for the proposals, that this be over 55 community that was appropriate for seniors. There's a large need in this town for people to downsize to something that they can afford, and that's accessible. Some of the proposals had lots of stairs that they're just not appropriate, and some of the ones that were ground floor, then with a townhouse on top of them, the bottom units were only 1 bedroom. So, you know, a lot of people would like to have 2 bedrooms when they downsize. So I think that should be kept in mind, that we should consider what would work for the seniors. A lot of people in this town looking for some place to go as seniors. So I like the Greylock best. There are a couple of drawbacks. I would have preferred the, instead of having apartments, although it's workforce apartments, which is a good idea, along with the other condos. I would have preferred that it was office, you know, maybe mixed office and an art gallery, a yoga space, you know, so kind of mixed stuff that wasn't retail. And I suspect that some of these contractors saw it as separate from the downtown, which is why they didn't put any commercial in there. They thought of it as more residential, where it, as we think of it, as more as a main part of our town, and I think it easily could be non-residential commercial. The couple other things about their proposal, I think their parking, their public parking ends up to be a little less than what we currently have, which I think could be an issue. And some of these things can be worked out with them. I don't think there were any details on their townhouse units. Maybe we could work on getting some one-story, two bedrooms in there. You know, there's probably some back and forth, I would think, with the final proposal with them, and they seemed very amenable to working with us. The Women's Institute was also a really great project. It's mixed income. You know, there might be some issues with them getting money from state and federal and all that. But that's a ground lease, which I think you forgot to mention. They're not purchasing the property. That would be a ground lease, and all the units would be rental. And there are some things there that are amenable for seniors. The other thing is just quickly, some of the Greylock, I don't think paid as much attention to the energy efficiency. All the other proposals, or at least Dakota and the Women's Institute, had LED silver or passive house energy efficiency, and I think that's something very important to keep in mind and consider when looking at these proposals. So I'll stop.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Just one comment, just to let you know, you're right. These proposals are not set
They're
in stone.
concepts.
They're concepts, and so, you know, in the process of whoever should do something down there, they'll have to go through planning and zoning, and I'm sure the recommendations will be made about energy efficiency and all those kind of things. So, you know, we're not stuck
Right,
with
it's just
everything
kind
that
of
we see.
an overall design concept, and the details will be finalized.
Right,
Thank you.
okay.
Evening. Phil McPherson from Everett's Lane, and this will surprise you, but I will try to be brief. First of all, I'll tell you my first choice, and that is the Women's Initiative Hope Alliance, and I'll tell you why. First of all, they will maintain the gym in the back as Madison community space. I think one or two of the others use the term community in designating spaces, but they were speaking of their condo community. Whereas this one, the community space was for all of Madison, so we would end up with a fairly large venue with a stage on it. I think
There would be a tenant in that space.
okay, that was not what I picked up on, but
Read their proposal.
okay, well, I will yield to whatever you all discover. Another thing that I liked about that, it would keep the parking spaces on Bradley Road across from the senior center. Parking is tight in that area as it is, and if we lose those parking spaces because of some of the others, I think it would be even tighter. The third thing, the town, and this you have to think about it a little bit, the town would retain ownership of the land, which means we would have better control over what happens there. Probably not worried about the next 5 or 10 years, but 25 years from now or 30 years from now, when probably you guys are not going to be sitting where you're sitting, but the citizens, oh yeah, okay, Scott, I'm sorry, you might be. Yeah, and Al's a young kid too, okay. But, so the town will retain a better say-so on what happens to that land in 40 years from now, say.
I'd just like to say you're running out of time to be brief.
Okay. Yeah, and I know y'all were talking about how one of the reasons you wanted to sell it was because you put it on the tax rolls, but perhaps the ground lease, which somebody else mentioned, could be negotiated to essentially cover the annual, what would be close to the annual tax income from that, so that becomes a moot point. And I'll, in the order of being brief, I'll avoid the other comments, except to say that I like, oh, excuse me, the second choice was Greylock, but in my opinion, because it maintained that auditorium in the front of the building for Madison community space. And then a commonality on both of them is that they are of lesser densities than the other two. And I don't want Madison to turn into, pardon me if this offends somebody, turn into Fairfield County. I don't know how many people have come up to me over the years and said, boy, Madison is wonderful. It's just like, fill in the blank, was 30 years ago. And, you know, if we really piled in all the condos and apartments that we can squeeze in, then we're going to be just like, fill in the blank, in a few years.
Yeah, one of the things we put in the RFP was we have to maintain the character of the town.
Yeah.
You know, that's very important.
Good evening, my name is Steve Fritzinger, I'm from Cambridge Drive, and I first wanted to thank you all for the time and effort you put into all this. I'm an architect, so I understand what goes into this and the decisions and the emotions and all that is included in that. I did want to, I think I will not go on at length about the proposals. There seems to be the last two anyway, spoke favorably of the Greylock and the Women's Institute projects, and I favor those as well. I sent in comments online as well, so those comments are there. I did have a follow-up question, though. It's been mentioned, and I saw on the website, the concept of moving the town hall facilities back into the center of town. And I don't know if there's been any real serious study done in that regard. Is that something you could address? I've been unable to find any real in-depth analysis of.
In the process, we talked about the possibility of finding out if we could sell the town campus property. Because, you know, if we're going to do this, I mean, if we were going to move from town campus over to Academy Street, it would be a huge expense. You know, I mean, probably $50 or $60 million to do the whole thing. That's probably not, I shouldn't throw numbers out, but it wouldn't be a lot of money. And so we looked at the possibility of being able to sell town campus to help pay for that. And I think we pretty much found out that it was almost impossible to carve up. You've got a police station there, you've got a gym, you've got all of our town tennis courts, we've got another baseball field there. It would be almost impossible to find somebody who would be interested in that piece of property with a police station on it, because, you know, otherwise we'd have to move the police station, that's another God knows how much. So we looked at it and we kind of came up with the idea that it's not feasible.
Understandably, seems like a little more in-depth study there might be a nice alternative if the residential alternatives that are being presented here don't come through, because it makes perfect sense for town hall to be in the center of town. I would also just say that as a final word, with the exception of the Women's Institute, the sale of the property is, you say there's no cost to the residents of the town of Madison, but it seems like a huge cost to lose that piece of property.
We're the Lanes, Greg and Anna Marie. We live on 13 Bradley Road. We've been there for 31 years. We are representing, or partially representing, a group of Bradley Road residents where this property is right in our front yards, literally. I think you can appreciate that. I would agree with many of the comments made so far. But even before I say that, I'd like to thank the committee, the work, Tom, Al, Mark, you guys have done a great job of basically opening this process up with the community. I appreciate that. Next comment. I think one of the things that we all, as this group, would like to say is that this space is very precious. It's been said before, town character. We don't want to look like Fairfield County. I think that is foremost in our thinking. Without repeating a lot of the other comments, one thing that has not been covered in the comments as yet is the density. We've talked about architecture and everything else, but density is a concern. We've heard parking. I would agree that both Greylock and Women's Institute preserve the existing parking opposite the senior center. That is a very, very, very busy area. Church on Sundays, ball games, you name it. The community center. There's overspill from the senior center virtually every day into that parking lot on Bradley Road. The bigger concern, though, for us in terms of density,
water.
water.
And that's because we've lived there in this site for 31 years. And you have to realize in the last 3 years, we've had drought, and so the water table's a little down. That's not normal here. And we have seen in every nor'easter, every hurricane that we've been through, you'd have to have wellies on to walk across Academy Field. Parts of it are very, very low. Now, right now, it's not a problem because the water table's slightly down, and we think that really high density of people in there. I mean, you know, back in the day when my son went to school there, you know, after a nor'easter, they couldn't flush the toilets. So you kind of have to realize there's an impact there. And I know that they have said that, you know, they've done a study and it's fine.
Just from personal experience, there was a very severe rainstorm about 5 or 6 years ago that affected the shoreline in Rhode Island. The water table in our neighborhood actually rose to the point where the basement of the addition to our house, which is 18 inches lower than the rest of the basement, had 6 inches of water in it. We couldn't stop the water simply because the water table came up. Why did it come up? I think because when we built that addition, our builder told us, oh, you got great percolation here. There should be no issue with going a little deeper into the property. What in fact occurred, because it's sandy property below us, the water table came up, which could, under most circumstances, is great for septic, but in the event that the water table comes up as a result of heavy rain, we could have a big issue.
So it's just that we're worried about hurricanes, nor'easters.
I think that's a consideration that should be put before the board in considering this. And then last but not least, you know, we tend to agree with others that have spoken. Greylock and the Women's Institute seem to be among the alternatives, the better looking of the four.
Thanks very much.
Diana Hartman, Lakeman Road. I'm in real estate, and if we're talking about that the town wants something on the payroll, the only way it could be is if it's condos or stores, because when you're talking about rentals there, and I think the plan that they presented looked really beautiful, and unfortunately maybe we should steal a little from everybody's plan to put it together. But we have to remember that the town wants money out of this. So it's not just purchasing the land, but it's a tax roll. And if we're talking about a tax roll, the rentals are not going to bring that tax roll, especially a not-for-profit. I mean, it's just a reality. As wonderful as it would be, you're not going to, your goal was to take this off of our hands and take something back. So I'm a little confused at that point. And I'm concerned because there are times that we, way before I came on to this town, and I absolutely love it. It is my home. But we have spent money on things that haven't really 100% worked for us. And I think we really have to say, what do we want out of this? Do we want it so that we have a tax roll? And I think that out of all of them, one of them was my friend, Greylock seemed the most logical except for all the stairs. I think that the seniors really, if we could end up with some flats, although they said a couple would be on the bottom, and I understood the one bedroom, logically speaking, one bedrooms don't bring money. You need 2 bedrooms. So maybe there's a way of tweaking all of the plans, and maybe it is Greylock who does it with us. And maybe we do have a community center that's in the middle where the gym or the auditorium was, and that gives us back at that point. But we have to make money. I think the town needs it. We're not getting much support from the state, and that's all I'm worried about.
Okay, I just want to comment quickly on what you said about, what people were offering us. When we started this process, one of the things we realized was that we're not expert at doing this, and so we wanted to open it up to ideas. We thought, we don't want to tell people too much what to do, but there were certain things that we felt were very important. Number one was the playground. That playground cannot go away. It has to be there, because we won't, as they close Island Avenue, there won't be another playground downtown for kids. So we thought that was important. We talked about open space and a bunch of other things. But the other thing we were trying to do was we were trying to elicit ideas, because if we tried to say too much that it should definitely be just this, people might walk away. And as it turned out, we started with, I think, 11 qualified proposers, and we ended up with 4 qualified proposals. Okay, so, I think we did pretty well to get 4 proposals. They offer us some different options, and we get to look at different things. And you're right, we need to look at them critically and see which one's going to be best for our town. But that was, from the very beginning, what we were trying to do, was we were trying to get ideas that would be feasible and, and workable.
And can I answer just one other thing? I was very active in the Shoreline Arts Alliance, and when we were trying to take the building, it would have cost $12 or $13 million to bring the building livable. So we can't forget that. So very honestly, even Greylock said he would probably be between $700,000 and $800,000. The logic is, if they build, they need to factor in how much it is costing them. So we're not going to get $400,000 or $500,000 apartments being there, or condos, or townhouses. It can't be done. I mean, you had 4 experts there who are saying that to you. Thank you. You've done a great job.
Good evening. My name is Alice Pence. I'm from Berkeley Drive, and I'm a fairly new resident to Madison, so bear with me. I'm trying to learn the history of all this development over the last few months. I've been reading a lot about what's transpired in the past. And as a new resident, I was very happy to do that survey that you put out. I felt like I wasn't participating. But I feel like there was a disconnect, and I felt like the survey talked about the building, and now I come to these meetings, and it's about the parcel. The wording seems to have changed from as a new resident, I walk in town a lot. I'm a big walker, and just to have a moment of romance, I just walk by those fields when the kids are playing and the grandparents are watching and the flags are waving and the church in the background. I'm like, oh my God, Americana. And to think about losing those kids like that. But at the same time, I agree with a lot of the other people here. I thought the Greylock proposal had the heart of Madison in it. And so over the course of the past weeks, I'm hearing about other options of development, and maybe option 5, if 1 through 4 don't work out, option 5, consider working with Greylock to revitalize the Academy School building and let them develop another parcel in land in town. Removing the back of the building, which they said, ugly. I think it was a word, it might make it more cost-effective to just revitalize the 1920-21 edition for the town's use, for the public, and go forward with that, and maybe work with them to give them some other part of town to develop housing. There's just some thoughts. I appreciate, I'm one of those Facebook people, but it is like an e-green conversation, and there's been a lot of really interesting comments, if any of you have weighed in on it, and I've learned a lot, pros and cons on this issue. I've learned a lot from my fellow citizens. So thank you, and good luck.
Hi, my name is Joe Mershman. I just wanted to comment briefly on that. I had a similar concern, which is that historically it seems like a lot of the studying that has been done and a lot of focus has been on how to develop and what to do with the Academy School building. Whereas in this process, somewhere along the lines, it morphed into, and the 4 acres that sit behind it, open space. My concern is, I know there are no easy answers, and there's certainly no easy answer to what to do with the building itself, but to me, I think the question is it worth forever losing that open space? To me, I think, in my own opinion, the answer is an obvious no, that it's not worth it, that we should go back to the drawing board and we should put out proposals, requests for proposals of what to do with the building and see what kind of answers we get back. Maybe we don't get any, and maybe that tells us something, but I don't think we should be surprised that the only proposals we got were ones that envisioned developing the whole parcel, because I'm not a developer, but if I was, and I had the option of develop this building with hazardous materials in it, it's going to cost you a lot, there's your cost center for your project, or do that and build on these nice, pristine, open space acres, of course, I'm going to propose to develop the whole thing. So I think we sort of preordained the responses we were going to get by the RFP, asking for proposals that would develop the entire site. And I think if we did it and said, what would you do with the building and the building only, we may get some different responses.
I'm not sure. I thought that we did say you could do just the building or the building in the fields in the RFP.
That's the point. They have the option to use it all if they wish.
Nobody wants to do just the building. It's not financially feasible. They need the condos in order to pay for the building. No, that's all of their opinion.
Well, what we do know, what I can tell you.
It costs us $30 million to renovate the building.
Microphone.
So the one proposal that was deemed unresponsive was only the land, not the building. They didn't want to do anything with the building. So that's why the original charge was to do something with the Academy School building and the parcel. When they came back and said, we're only taking the land, you keep the building, the committee felt that's unresponsive, so we're not going to advance it. That was the 5th proposal. We did reach out to the firms because we knew this was a question about the building only, and we know of the 4 firms that proposed, 2 said that they would walk. And the other 2 said, they didn't say that they would walk, but they would look at it differently. The economics are different because, again, as somebody noted, the remediation cost to get that building to a position to live makes it far less attractive when you're trying to rent it out to workforce housing or some other affordable housing entity. But they didn't say they would walk, but they would definitely have to look at the economics.
Hi there. So my name is Adam Boyce, and I'm the president of Madison Little League. And standing in front of 2 former presidents, thank you for your time and allowing us to voice our opinion. And I know you know what's coming next. But I would be remiss if I didn't get a chance to say something. I'm new to this town. We moved here about 5 years ago. And I lived in Groton, Massachusetts, which is outside of Boston, and a nice little farm town. And they didn't have this, they don't have what they have here. right? And what they have is this town that is centered around a community, and if you lose that, you're going to miss it, and you won't know it until you lose it. We had a complex that was built on the outskirts of our town, and it took 20 or 30 minutes to get out there. It was a great complex, it was beautiful, and it was amazing, but you had to drive outside of town, and so you lost that community feel. And that was a big part of what I liked about Academy Fields, is that you had a chance to gather the kids and had a chance to rally around the town and be a part of that community. And I feel like we're going to miss that. And the fact that that wasn't part of the RFP to say, hey, we really want this community, we want this fields to be available for the kids. You know, we have 400 kids, at least in the spring program, 500 if you factor in some of the travel programs as well. And throughout the entire year, these kids are on that field consistently, and we're going to displace a lot of them. We also entertain and offer a program for Buddy Ball, which is for special needs kids, and they play on Sunday when other kids aren't there. And it's a great program for these guys. And we're losing that site, and I'm afraid that if we just continue on and say we need money, we're going to lose the community that we really have here. So I just wanted to make sure that we raise that
Hi, I'm Robin Phillips from the Post Road. Firstly, I think the process, I have to say, it's been very good with the RFP process, so I commend you for the work and the effort you put into that. Now, I'm not an accountant, but if I look at an appraisal of $1 million, I assume that's on the asset side of the balance sheet. But pretty soon, if we don't do anything, it's going to turn into a liability. So I agree with what you said earlier, that we have to do something. We have to do something. I'm relatively new to the town. I know you guys have been looking at this for longer than I've been here. But we need a solution. And we have to have something that's financially viable to the town and to developers. So the question to me when I look at the proposals is, you know, not what's in each proposal, but who is the best developer to work with? Who's the best team to work with? And I think the answer to that, to me, fairly plainly, was Greylock. And I would say that the Women's Institute proposal, which I know there is a lot of support for, I thought was very good, very detailed. But I think the fact is their agenda is for affordable housing. That's not our agenda. So I rejected it on that basis. And I also think that with their structure, they are hard to work with. So I would support moving ahead with Greylock as a private developer. I think they showed flexibility, they showed openness in the way they presented and answered questions. So I feel that, as well as being a Connecticut company, I think that they would be the best developer for us to work with and for us to shape our agenda and to have them to address that. And I liked the proposal earlier about maybe finding another parcel of land. If we can come to an arrangement with them that allows them to make money and satisfies our requirements and maybe keeps that piece of land behind that people seem to like.
Catherine Ferrante, I live on Cops Road, fairly near the Academy School property. And I agree with previous commenters that we should perhaps be looking at other properties in the town that are going to be an issue very soon, such as Island Avenue School and what to do with that property. And we should be looking at that in conjunction with this, because it may turn out that it makes sense to put housing and development on that property and work with developers to help us develop the Academy School property so that they'll still get their profits. You know, with that housing, I think it makes more sense to put housing there. It's already surrounded by housing. It's in a residential area. It's still close to downtown. You could perhaps put the senior housing there that there seems to be a need for, that people are concerned about. I also agree with previous commenters about the questionable value of having development on that Academy School property. Putting aside the building and its disrepair for a moment, I would hate to see losing that open space. I don't see teens and youth so much represented here tonight, and I wish we did. I really want teens to have a place to hang out. I don't have teens of my own. It's been a long time since I was a teen, but I grew up in a town that didn't have any central open space. And so me and my friends, we weren't troublemakers, but we hung out in parking lots, at businesses, playgrounds, places we weren't really supposed to be. And we just wanted a place to go and be with our friends. And I forgive me, I'm going to read something. It's very brief, and I have permission, but this is from a teen whose mother posted on Facebook his response to the Academy School, the response to losing those ball fields in that open space behind Academy School. He says, "But Mom, when I'm downtown with my friend Nick and other friends, the only place we have to go is Academy Field. We kick a ball or throw a football, lay down on the grass and look at the sky and talk about life. There isn't any other place to go, not even a place to sit and eat something except Subway, and that's not great. Adults need to be able to think like kids sometimes. Imagine all the memories that will never happen, all for stupid condos that only a few people will enjoy. Once it's gone, you can never get it back. Why would they do that?" When I bring my, not my words, but great. When I bring my little kids to that playground, all the people that I see using those ball fields are teens. And I'd love for my kids, when they get older, to have that place to go and have that, and instead of spending all their time on social media, just to go and be in the community, right in the center of town, a place where they're safe. I don't think that little shred of green that these proposals leave behind, I think that just pays lip service to our idea of wanting an open space. I honestly don't foresee residents who pay $700,000 for a condo in the center of town are going to want people congregating right in what is essentially their backyard. So I have real reservations about doing housing on this property. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jack Davis, 14 Longview Terrace. I would like to make one suggestion for the future. Take this microphone, put it up there. I don't like to have people look at my back all the time. Why can't we talk to all of us together as a family, which is what we're here to do? This is the shrink talking. In 1954, my wife and I came up with one little baby. We started a place called the Grove School. Still in existence. Still the most famous facility in the world for helping youngsters. Still a good taxpayer, a member of the community, employs many people. Still loved and cared about. I'm here because I love this town. We raised our children. 2 out of our 3 children live in Madison. There are no jobs here. We tried to build a biopark. You turned it down, the town did. We tried to build apartments. You turned it down. David has a tape recording of the meeting when I tried to build the houses here, apartments in Madison. So I have a history. We had one police officer, Jake Rickard. There were 4,000 people when we came to town. We knew everybody. It was a family, and still should be. And in that context, that's why I want the microphone over there, so we can speak to all together as a family. Now this project, it's an albatross. I wish it never happened. I looked at these proposals, disgusting. It changes the entire flavor of the community. Just think of what you want to do to yourself. massacre yourself, changing the whole town. We are trying to do things differently. We built the restaurant near the theater, the Sea House. We tried to do something nice, and it is unusual. We're trying to add something to the town so that there's things to do in the summer, the winter, the bookstore, the movie theater, all these things. Why destroy it? Because we have a building in Albatross that we're stuck with. We should realize that we have to think of the future, not the present, that we need the money, because we always need money. When do we go to that? You are my friends. I like you. I like the people in the community. I adore Madison. My kids adore the town. Why destroy it with this monstrosity? We have to find a solution. I have been to all the meetings, and we've had meetings for 3 years, I think, about this property. And I attended almost all of them when I could. And what happened? We lost an opportunity for an arts center. Something that would really add a stamp of approval. Take the sculpture mile. Do you know the resistance that we had in the town when we started the sculpture mile? Some people said, if I want to see art, I'll go to a museum. It's true. You could go to a museum. But what's wrong with the museum being here? Do you know that in the properties that we own in Madison, we have our own sculptures? Take the movie theater, the big one in the back. All of our properties have sculptures. We've tried to add human, some dignity, some beauty, some excitement, where kids can look and say, what is that? That's what you need. By the way, I'll give you a secret. I was in negotiation to buy the property, the Hammonasset School, which the town now has. And when the town began to talk about moving there, I backed out. Little secrets now came out. Why? Because I thought the town could use it. It was more important than the town have it than I have it. The school would have been over there at that point. So with all this history, and I can go on and on, we know. Will anyone cede their 2 minutes to me? How many will cede their 2 minutes to me? Additional 2 minutes.
You've already used all those up, Jack.
The point is, this is the subject. It's a humor and it's a serious thing. We have to look at all aspects of this. We're all together. We're not enemies. We have differing opinions, that's fine. I respect these differing opinions, even though I don't like them. But that's the democracy we live in. That we here can come together, express ourselves, unburden ourselves, talk about interesting issues. So here I am pleading with you folks to not look at this as a simple thing. The money will come and go. But to destroy that property, the whole flavor of the town, by having these monstrosities there, right where the green is, so much that we cherish. Did you know I started the concerts on the green here in Toronto? There were many things we did in town, quietly, because it was important, and it was obvious that we could use it. 4,000 people come to the green for the concerts. Stuart Dickinson puts it together, marvelous, with all his effort and energy and skill and brilliance. Let's use that power that we have to continue to preserve what we've built and what we've worked for all these many years. Thank you, Joe.
Madison resident from the heart to all of this. And so I'm a newish Madison resident, but my husband and his brother are proud second-generation Madison residents. And he was adamant that this is where we raise our children, this is where we put down roots. And when he was trying to convince me the benefits and the merits of moving to Madison versus being somewhere closer to New York City or anything like that, he brought me up smartly in the summer, and he took me to downtown, and I fell in love with the vibrancy of downtown and everything that happened on the green. You know, the arts and crafts fairs during the summer, on the weekends, the concerts that, thank you, I didn't know you started this, thank you, I think we all appreciate those. And then, you know, all the restaurants we have going downtown. And so this chance to develop, and I also fell in love with the historic buildings and just the integrity and that it's mainly intact, unlike, unfortunately, Guilford, you know, lost a lot of their buildings along Route 1 to development. Madison has done a great job of preserving the original developments. So what I would like to say is that of these development proposals, I think Greylock is the one that really gives you the chance to strengthen that link between the green and downtown and keep the vibrancy going and potentially grow it into a year-round thing with the Arts Center and with deeding back some of the land to Madison. You know, we're not losing the playground network. That is your guarantee that this is still something the community can use and is valued. And unfortunately, you know, there are condos in the back, but that's the financial aspect. So now I'll put on my business hat. So I do have a degree in historic preservation, and I work in construction management now. So I can tell you, as somebody who has a soft spot for historic buildings, they're not easy. You know, I look at them like my lost little puppies at the pound. So they take a lot of money, and especially when they have PCBs and remediation. I just want everybody to continue to keep that in mind. And if you want a developer to come and not depend on the town supporting them, you need to give them a reason. And unfortunately, those ball fields and that developable land becomes the reason that they can make this viable. So just, you know, that's just my opinion, and I'm sure, you know, there's a lot of financial studies to back that up. But I just want everybody to kind of keep that in mind, and also keep in mind when you're considering these proposals, what they're offering to pay the town for the value of this land, because it is a very valuable parcel. So the town would be remiss to give it away for less than what we're owed. So that's just what I'd like to say.
Thank you.
Hey, Tom, David Cademus, Fence Creek. I've been through this process a few times myself. I was chair of EDC for a number of years, and we prepared the Bradley Road vision statement that was ultimately adopted in the Plan of Conservation Development. A lot of that dealt with the issues of housing, turning the town to face Tux's Pond more, bringing in septics and upgrading those kinds of things. So there's a lot of history there. I also was the chair of the 2010 Academy Street study. And at that time, I got schooled by Jack at the same meetings in the public sector, and he changed my mind about a number of things, about thinking big and thinking about our future and how this thing ties in to our town. So I have kind of two questions, or one more comment and then two questions that I think would be like to hear about. In thinking big, one of the things that always has struck me is that in 2026 is our 200th anniversary for the town of Madison. And when I was going through both the Bradley Road study as well as the Academy study, I was struck by how many Madison residents contributed not only their time and effort, but their personal wealth to preserving the town green and really preserving, embracing the center of town to be something special. And I think it's worth looking at, reading all those things in the historical archives and really remembering that as part of our movement. My questions really, and I also wanted to just comment that I really think this was a great process. I think you guys should be commended. It's a lot of work to bring this together and to bring it together in a positive way like this so that people can comment on real things, because that's the bottom line. You have to have someone in front of you, or none of us would be here to comment.
And so look at that, that's positive, and I think that's part of the family dynamics here that Jack was talking about. My questions are two. One is, I don't recall what the Plan of Conservation and Development says in terms of our goals for the Academy parcel and the town center. So I'd like, if someone knows that, to comment on that one for me, because I think it would be helpful for you to put that in context of what many generations of people have played a long-term plan for that, so we can see how these proposals complement or contradict that statement. And second, I think it'd be helpful to put some economics to this, because part of the question is, all right, what does this really mean to the tax base? What does this really mean to the mill rates? What does this really mean in terms of the actual dollars we'll be receiving? And I'm sure somebody in your group has probably crunched those numbers for each of those four proposals to some degree. Order of magnitude, obviously, it's not. So those are my two questions that I will be.
Okay, so as far as the financial aspect of any development is concerned and what impact it would have, you know, I want to stop short of saying it'll lower taxes, because as the state continues to take money away from us, we need to replace it. So it's not going to lower taxes, but hopefully it'll help hold the line on taxes, whatever we do. We did ask the developers, because I didn't think that we were the right ones to try to answer that question ourselves. So we asked the developers to put some numbers on the projects as far as what they thought they were going to sell them for. I saw one, I don't know if we got all of them back. Excuse me, so if we don't have them all, I don't want to just single anybody out. But I did see one thing where they even calculated the gain of automobile taxes. You know, they showed what the condos would be, what the apartments would be, and then what autos would be. So we did have a good understanding of what that one project would contribute to the tax base. But we don't have all four, do we? We do. Okay, you want to talk to that?
Thanks. And don't hold me to these numbers, but these are just, you know, rough orders of magnitude. So they range, obviously, from the more dense, the high value, to the, you know, the not-for-profit group. So starting with the Women's Institute, you know, their tax base was going to be a lot less than, let's say, RAL. So they were estimating post-development something in the $90,000 to $100,000 of annual taxes for that particular development. The one that Tom was just referring to, Greylock, they estimated at about $380,000. The Dakota development, they estimated approximately $425,000. And RAL was $370,000, plus or minus.
What is that as a percentage of the town budget? Both town and...
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Town budget's 85 million, 82 million, so it's less than 1%. Dave, did you want to talk about the Plan of Conservation and Development?
Dave Anderson, Director of Planning and Economic Development. Unfortunately, the Plan of Conservation and Development doesn't give us a lot of guidance on this issue. The language included just simply says to seek to reuse or repurpose Academy School. So there's no specific recommendation in that plan.
Thanks. Yes.
Hi, I'm Maddie Mortensen. I'm a junior here at Daniel Hand, and as a teen from Madison, I can express that I would be greatly hurt by the loss of the public fields, because personally, all my friends meet down there. We have lunch in the picnic tables, we sit in the sun together, we play sports there together, and that's like one of the only places in town that feels like the heart of the town. And I know I meet up with, even without trying to meet up with people, I see people downtown and end up hanging out together. And I know there's students there that don't necessarily do sports, but that's where they go to do their sports. They practice sports there. The middle schoolers, my brother always goes down to town campus. When we ask him, why are you going downtown, or not town campus, sorry, the field. when I ask him, what are you doing downtown? He goes, oh, I'm playing baseball with my friends, or we're throwing lacrosse together, or we're playing basketball. And one of the reasons why my parents moved here was because of the sense of community that Madison has. And that was one of the big parts, was because there was such a good area downtown for us to go to and to hang out at. And just yesterday, I was at the beach, and a lady came up to me and asked about the town, and I was like, why are you asking so many questions? And she says, because she's trying to move here. And she has kids, and she asked me, what is there to do downtown? And the fields were one of the biggest things I said, was because it had the playground for her kids to play at, the fields were used all the time, easy access downtown to food and to picnics and everything, and I just know I would be upset to lose that place that I go to, and for all the other kids that haven't been able to experience that yet.
Hi, I'm Janet Nicolini, and I'm also a realtor in town. I would be very upset to see this crown jewel, a piece of land, given up because we need to clean up a building. And the fact that we need, I get it. I get the fact that there needs to be condos there for the developer to be able to do this project. But I love the idea that somebody brought up that perhaps we wait, we take a pause until we have the Island Avenue property, and maybe we work with Greylock to come up with a way where he can profit and he can develop the Island Avenue property and create something even more special with the property we have on the Academy layer. I just feel like we are going to regret years down the line that we put condos on that crown jewel that we have right now in the center of town. Originally, I was all for the condos. I was all for economic development. I hate when I get my tax bill. I hate what it looks like. I mean, but I look at this piece of property and I say, this is the heart of our town. How can we mortgage that for our teens and future generations of the town by putting up high-density condos there? And I do have another concern that nobody's brought up, and please tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me that it's an unreasonable concern, but if you tell me that, it better be true. Because my concern is that we don't own our town green. The church owns our town green. So even though we've had a great relationship with them over 100 years or however long it's been, and they allow us to have all of our events there and our farmers markets and everything, could that ever change? What are the terms of that agreement with the church? So if we can't be guaranteed that that's our town green, what if that goes away? Then we have no town green because we've put condos on it.
Right.
So I think we're being really short-sighted to try to make a few bucks, to shave a few bucks off our tax bills by giving up this precious, precious piece of property. And I'd love the answer to that question on the town green. Thank you.
Good evening. Ted Cosgrove, Flintlock Road. First off, I just want to thank our present elected officials and past elected officials that are here and those that have served on boards and commissions that have worked on this albatross, if you will, concept for 15 years when Academy Street was closed. Basically, to be honest with you, what brings me here is family. You've heard a lot of people talk about that tonight. My dad grew up in Waterbury. He used to come down here off of down by Seaview Avenue with a friend from Waterbury that had a house down here. And it was his dream to raise a family in Madison. And sure enough, that's what he did. He got here in 1969, bought a house on Woodlawn Avenue, which was the same street that he used to go with his friend to visit on. And it was a great place to grow up. My wife of 21 years also was raised and grew up here in Madison as well. And we were dating for a year before it came up in conversation that, you know what, it was our dream to raise a family in Madison. That's something that she had always dreamed about and I had dreamed about. People talk tonight about the concern about the change of our community in downtown. And when you talk about this specific project, when you start talking about dense housing development in downtown, it's a significant change. It's also a significant change when you start looking at other factors. This is a really, really complex issue and problem to solve. It's not just a matter of how do you clean up Academy and how do we generate dollars out of it. You guys are doing your due diligence. One of the things that you do need to do is part of this process, is there a way for the town to recoup money? Is there a way for the town to do this financially feasible? And if it's at no cost to us and it makes sense, then you guys have done a really, really good job. But I don't think this makes sense. You're losing, basically, we've lost Academy Street. That's a whole vibrant thing that used to be downtown. You used to go downtown, you can see kids walking to the library, kids getting out. That's a whole component that's been lost downtown. We're about a year or two away, I think, from losing Island Avenue School. You're not going to have any school children downtown 9 months out of the year. That's a vibrant place. This is a family community, always has been. People come here. You know, people call up and they come here because of the education. I'm an athletic director. They call, unfortunately, they don't always call the English department and say, I want to know about your English department. They want to know about the lacrosse team. They want to know about the cheerleading squad. They want to know about all these things that their kids can do. And that's what we've got in the center of our town. And for us to lose that whole flavor just because of the dollar, I think there are creative solutions that have been talked about tonight. I've got ideas on that where you can figure out where to put this project or condos elsewhere to generate the money that you're trying to do. But I think we're really going to lose something that we can't get back. And it goes back to the fabric of this community and what it is. I also know, if I read it correctly, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of the zoning component as well, I think it was called an R2 zone, which is more residential. Doesn't necessarily allow you for apartments and condos, which speaks to the point up there that planning and zoning does have appropriate authority to make those changes. There's probably a reason why that concept was put in place a long time ago. When you think of residential down there, you think of the people that live on the town green and those kind of homes down there. You're not thinking of condos and apartments. Sometimes you need to take a step back, remember who we are, why we are who we are. I don't want us to be Guilford with Route 1 overdeveloped, or Brantford overdeveloped, or Westbrook with outlets, or Clinton with outlets and some of the stuff down here. We are who we are, and I think we need to take really the wholesale fact of who we are, why we are, and there's a bunch of people over a good number of years that have worked so hard to keep that fabric. And for the quick fix of cleaning up Academy and doing something else, I think you've got some other solutions in front of you. And I challenge you guys, please, to roll up your sleeves and keep working at that for us.
My name is Tracy Jinks, and I live on Brookview Terrace. I've lived there since I was 3. I went to all the schools in town, and if I didn't go to a school like Island Avenue, it was closed. My dad was principal of Cox Road School, and my sisters went to Academy Street School. I knew Mrs. Ryerson, who she has a school named after her. She was my principal. She wrote a history of Madison. And on chapter 10 of her book, it says, Mr. Hand stipulated, if the building is ever not to be used as an educational institution, it is to be sold and the money is to be used to provide education for the Negroes and the South. Okay, Madison, 300 Years by the Sea, page 53 that I didn't copy, but I will send it to you tomorrow. Says that the 1920s building was rebuilt with the original stone from the original building. So here's the papers. It would be nice that when you put stuff in the paper, you quote from it so you get the right, accurate information. Okay, so my father and I would like it to, Academy Street to remain a school. It was the nicest school in town. The important things were the gym and the auditorium that even has a ticket booth, if you look very closely, if you walk up the steps by the burrito truck. I have seen it in the last 3 years with windows open in the basement. Someone left them open. They were not broken to come open. So someone wasn't taking care of the school. We keep choosing that we want it to be a school, yet you keep constantly putting together developments. We would like it to end. Some of us have to work. Some of us don't have time to come to hearings. Let's see. Okay, so High Hill and Brown are on a uranium deposit that we all know about. Okay, so I'm really confused why you keep kids up at those schools playing on the playgrounds. I understand you took care of the water, but when I go to high school reunions, because I lived here since I was 3, and I went to both Ryerson and Brown, we talk about who got cancer this year. So congratulations. Let's see. Asbestos and removal in Madison should be Madison's responsibility. It's their buildings, they shouldn't push it off on anyone else. My mother died recently and she said it was her fault that they never fixed Academy because my sister had juvenile arthritis and she just kept her home at school for school when she had arthritis bouts in her knees. But she said she could have forced them to put the elevator in. I think you should take care of your buildings. Island Avenue, we put solar panels on that building and it was an 8.5-year payback, which is right around now, I think, if I remember when it started. It's a waste to not keep that building, okay? So, and the other thing is population growth, and if we get businesses back to Connecticut, because there's too much growth other places, that they have to come here, you will see an increase with the kids. And this has happened a couple times in my lifetime. It happened in 5th grade. All of a sudden, we couldn't have a library because it was full of kids that just showed up the day before school. So, I mean, and no one's going to buy a $700,000 townhome downtown. Nobody. They can buy my dad's house for $330,000. 3-bedroom with woods in the back and trails. Let's see. Let's see. All right. Thank you very much. And if we're forced to have one of these people do it, the women's group or Greylock combined was the better choice.
Thank you.
My name is Terry. I live on Bartlett Drive, and I first want to thank you for having this open discussion. I was a part of the overall discussion and what to do with the old Griswold Airport. I'm a pilot by trade. I had 28 years in the Air Force, and I was a staunch supporter of keeping that an airport, and I think we could have done so and actually made it profitable for the town, but that's a sidebar. So I appreciate your allowing us to have input here, because my recollection from that discussion was that we can do anything with it so long as it's ball fields. Maybe I'm wrong, but anyway. So I would like to, and I've been here in this town on and off since 8th grade, and I'm back here now to stay. So anyway, I second the motion for restoring the building alone in whatever capacity that means. And I know that we talked about, I wish I could have been a part of the public questionnaire about what do you want to do with it. And if people responded residential housing, I'm sorry I couldn't put my input in to say I don't think that that's the best use for this. I think there are a lot of different options that perhaps haven't been explored, and if you came out and requested from the request for proposals and said we only want residential, then that's what we got. So maybe we can go back and see what other options there are. Mixed use is a very vague term. I mean, there's all kinds of things for mixed use, and just in terms of location, the Academy Street building itself could actually be a bridge from Main Street downtown to the events on the green. you know, if we did use it for a combination of different purposes such as restaurant, dinner theater, art co-op, office use, you know, all kinds of varieties within that huge structure itself. I would,
kind of a mixed use.
yeah, I would guess that that would be generating a lot of tax revenue just from commercial use. And then perhaps we could keep the back of it as open space, which I think the majority here is in favor of. Because again, once it's gone, it's gone. Never get it back. Okay.
Are you reading from all those pages?
No.
Okay.
There's a lot of scribbling on here, don't worry. So we already talked about planning and zoning. Planning and zoning has the authority to change the zone and or amend the regulations to allow additional uses. So I challenge all of us here to come up with different ideas, different uses for it, other than what we're just looking at as all or nothing on these deals. Just a couple of specifics. The RAL proposal was a one-time payment up front of $150,000, and then if any unit sold for more than, I think it was $500 per square foot? If it sold for more than well, they're expecting $500 per square foot. If it goes to $700 or over, then the town will get 15% of that difference. That's nothing. And I bet you a lot of people here have $150,000 that can give you right now if you want to turn that property over to us. 150 is nothing. Also, Greylock said 1.2 million. Dakota Property, they offered 1 million. I did notice on the town campus website today, the appraised value per the town records of this property is $5,304,000. $5.3 million. That's the appraised value. Why would we sell it to anybody for $1 million or $150,000? I've got a $300,000 house. If I sold it for $60,000, I think somebody here would call me foolish. So that's something I would like you to address. Why are we looking at selling this whole property for 20% of the value according to town records?
That's the assessor's record. We had an independent appraisal done of the property, and they came up with $1 million. So, you know, you have to realize that there's cleanup and everything else that they take into account when they come up with the value of the property. It was on the assessor's records for $5 million for years. Just as an answer to your question.
Yeah, okay. Just a couple other specifics. The Dakota Property, 79 units is high-density housing. I don't think too many people here are in favor of the high-density housing. The RAL, again, it's all about multi-million-dollar properties that probably won't move. It's unlikely in this current economic environment and in this town. I think we see a lot of for sale signs that are just not turning over. I like the Women's Institute for Housing and Economic Development, and the reasons are, they talked about, they've got only 29 units that they were looking at. And again, I'm not a proponent of residential. I think we can use that building for mixed use that is non-residential. But their comments to be taken into account when you're looking at what you're going to do with this property. 15,000 square foot of flexible community space and art space. They also stressed that they would work closely with the town to identify use for the 15,000 square foot community art space and negotiate with the town for a mix of the site's recreational space. So open space, mixed use, and in terms of saving money where we don't have it, we need it, I would say that that's probably a discussion about the whole town budget, that we're going to have to tighten our belts. We spend a lot of money in areas, and I think we can do better than that. I think people who work outside the town have had to sacrifice in their own jobs because of the current economic situation. So we expect people who are being paid by the town to do the same thing. Thank you.
We're trying.
Catherine Hunter, 31 Scotland Avenue. Hi, Madison. I'm going to keep this fast. If somebody said I had 4 words that I could say, it's the wrong 5 acres. I echo the sentiments that have been expressed earlier this evening. One of the things that makes Madison special is its aesthetic beauty. It's just a beautiful town. It's not only the shoreline that is naturally beautiful, but it's the historic center. It's going to take a village to save a village. And what Mr. Davis and others have said, this is a very short-sighted proposal. I want to add a few other points until I get to my main point. If the reason to develop is the dollars, these are all very preliminary proposals. I don't think we're at a point yet when we can actually vote on that threshold issue. We need the dollars and cents before we vote. For those who are wondering how we got here, I heard Mr. Kademas speak earlier. I think it's important that everybody understand that after 10 years or more of reports, analysis, studies, the Ad Hoc Academy School Committee met. They reviewed everything that had come previously, and they crunched numbers and made a motion to the Board of Selectmen in 2012 that the economics were not there to support the sale of this building at the time. And they weren't talking about the property. And the Board of Selectmen met under Fillmore McPherson's administration and voted unanimously to retain ownership of this building. That vote is what led to the Shoreline Arts Alliance. It wasn't some backroom deal, it wasn't some whimsy, it wasn't arbitrary. The reason the Shoreline Arts Alliance deal was pursued was several reasons. It checked a ton of boxes. Building only, adaptive reuse of the building, preservation of this architecturally and historically significant building, no development, no use of the ball fields and the playground, respecting the fact that the green area for 200 years has been preserved as a special place for community, for church, for state, for public gathering. It did not generate tax revenues to the town, that's for certain, but what it did do, that plan with Shoreline Arts Alliance, was it relieved the town of the burden of carrying the cost of this building. Another thing it did on an emotional level is it made us feel better that we were actually making a decision. It's really hard to see this building deteriorating. It's like getting old, you know, and it's happening to me. So it's tough, and it's hard to be in limbo. My main point is that a development-only referendum is not a fair vote. We absolutely I applaud the fact that the board and the first selectmen have gone through this process. I take exception with the fact that it started in 2016. This process started way before 2016, and the last time we were all speaking publicly about this, including myself, was in connection with the Shoreline Arts Alliance. But it started even before that. I was only in for a year of that effort. The town has taken the time and spent actually a fair amount of money on bringing an RFP and proposals for development. Make no mistake about it, that RFP was a commercial development RFP. If the town would like to entertain other adaptive reuses of this building, they should issue an RFP for an adaptive reuse of this building. So my main point, to the town and to the Board of Selectmen and our first selectman, we need a fair vote. We need options.
My name is Dick Pissarro. I wish I could be as gracious as Jack. Either I'm not quite as old as you are. Almost. But I'm not. It's just not in my nature. I don't think we've arrived at this point accidentally. I think we've been steered, manipulated into this position. I wrote one of the early proposals for converting the Academy Street School into a cultural arts center. And I know the problems of money, and I know what happened in the process.
And the previous speaker, I think, outlined what actually happened in that. The newspaper articles in the source always say the proposal failed. Well, that isn't the truth. There are a lot of things behind the scenes that caused that to fail. I'm up here for just one reason only, because I said that I think we've been manipulated to this point. And that is to ask you to please do not give us a referendum in the fall for 2 proposals. We need a referendum that has many more, or at least has some other options than these 2 to 4 proposals that have been given to us. And I honestly feel that if we don't get up and say this, that's exactly what you're going to give us. You'll give us a proposal for 2 of these economic undertakings, and you'll say, well, we've been through this whole process, we talked about converting Academy Street School and so on, and all of the information leads us to this conclusion that we have to have one of these 2 options. We don't have to have one of these 2 options, and please don't do this.
Hi, Catherine Ferrante again. Somebody asked a very relevant question earlier that I don't think you answered, which was the details of the agreement with the church on use of what we know as the town green, but actually we don't own. And, you know, I know that's gone on for a couple of 100 years, but, you know, we don't own it, so what scenarios could...
What I said was, I don't have the details, I'll have to talk to the church about that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but, you know, I mean, I don't see any reason why it would change, but I'll look into that.
Okay, are we going to have another one of these where we can get answers to questions like that?
If we need to.
Yeah. And maybe have the town attorney involved to answer some questions if need be?
He may not know the answer to that. We might just have to research it.
But it's an agreement, a contract?
That's what I need to find. I don't have a clue.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what guides are.
You might want to ask the attorney. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Calvin Price. I live on Green Springs Drive. And my first comment is just like to thank the Board of Selectmen, and especially you, Tom, for leading this process. I think when we have the opportunity to be engaged, we learn a lot. My only comment tonight is that we should listen. Listen to all the commentaries. I think we need to go back and do our due diligence on what we're hearing tonight. And I think number 2, we probably need to slow the process down so that we have a true understanding of where we're going and why we're going there. That requires us to have another conversation. I think that would allow for us to truly accomplish what we set this process out to be, is to hear the voice of the town. And I think the selectmen has heard the voice of the town tonight. And I think it would be to our advantage to make sure we analyze all of the information that we've gathered tonight. And particularly in light of the fact that these are concepts. There's an opportunity for us to push back to all our developers to incorporate these concepts into what you're hearing tonight. In addition to that, I think it's going to be extremely important that we get pro formas and the cost of this project as to what it's going to deliver, pro and con for the town. A ground lease sounds great. $370,000 sounds great, but the quality of life is going to be impacted. And I think that the intangible asset that we've heard all tonight as far as to what the value is for people living in the town of Madison. I've been here for 35 years. I've enjoyed every day. I've raised my kids here. My grandkids are coming every day now. I have my in-laws living here, and I appreciate all the wonderful things that this town stands for. And I think it's up to us to make sure that individuals that come behind us have the same experience and the same quality of life that we hear year after year after year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Schroeder. I live on Johnson Lane. I believe my family moved here in 1907, and many sides of my family have been educated at Academy Street. What I think I've learned from this process is that the RFP, probably I think there's a consensus in the room, should have precluded overdevelopment via residential approaches. because I don't think that's supported by the town. However, I would have supported that approach if I actually thought it was going to lower my taxes. So one revelation that I've had tonight, because I just haven't had the opportunity to find that information, is how little these proposals would positively affect my taxes. It's a pittance.
Thank you.
Hi, Fred Muser, Green Hill Road. I've been here my whole life. My parents went to school at Academy, and I taught at Academy, and I love that building. It's a great place to teach. It was always a wonderful experience to go in there with the children. The halls were huge, the ceilings were high. It was bright, it was beautiful. I wonder how we got here to this point. We got here because it's so much easier to spend money than it is to make money. And we have spent a lot of money on many, many things in this town. But we have never been able to grow our tax base. So we have a lot of land. But the problem with that is that it gets more and more expensive to live here. So as much as I love living in Madison, somewhere along the way, I'm going to have to make a choice. Can I afford to stay in this town? So I don't, whatever proposal or whatever we decide to do, I think is important. I've heard that the property behind Academy is the heart of the town. No, the people. You are the heart of the town. You make up the town. Everything that we do, and every time we get together, and we discuss and we talk and we work out our problems and our difficulties, and we come to some conclusion, that's the heart of the town. What we decide to do with Academy School is incredibly important. What we decide to do with the land behind Academy School is incredibly important. But we have to think, what is going to keep this town sustainable? Can we keep people in a town when the taxes go up? Can we keep people in a state when the taxes continue to grow? Maybe there are other alternatives, and I hope there are. I hope there are better ways to do this. But we could have had Salt Park for $2 million. We paid a lot more than that for that piece of property. We could have had a school at town campus. We didn't. We lost out there too. We could have kept Academy open, and then we wouldn't have to be figuring out what to do with it now. But we didn't. So we got ourselves into this predicament. We have to figure out a really, really good way to get ourselves out of it. So, you are the heart. Be the heart. Be strong. Let's make this a really good decision. Maybe the first one in a long time. So, thank you.
Okay, so hearing no more comments, I'd just like to remind people that if you go to our town website, there's a link to Academy School. It has a bunch of FAQs that you can go. Please feel free to send us emails, most of them to Scott Murphy. Seriously, we look forward to hearing from you and from your friends. Let us know how you feel. Thanks for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it.